All right, let's dive into the world of microorganisms. You know, they can be our best friends or our worst enemies.
So let me ask you this. What if the most powerful life on Earth was completely invisible? Well, here's the thing. It is, and it's literally all around us right now.
We call these tiny life forms microorganisms, or just microbes for short. Now, most of them are just a single cell. And when I say they're everywhere, I mean everywhere, from boiling hot springs to the deepest parts of the ocean, and yeah, probably on the very screen you're looking at this moment.
Okay, so let's meet the cast of characters in this invisible world. We're going to break down the major groups. So we can pretty much sort microbes into a few main buckets. First, you've got bacteria. These are the single-celled workhorses of the planet. Then there's fungi. Think yeasts and molds. You've also got protozoa, which are kind of like tiny one-celled animals. And of course, algae, the microscopic green machines doing photosynthesis. But then you have the really weird one, the one that doesn't quite fit in, viruses.
Yeah, viruses are strange. They exist in this weird gray area. They're not really alive in the way a bacterium is, but they're not just dead matter either. The best way to think of them, they're like biological pirates. They have no ship of their own, so they can't reproduce by themselves. Instead, they have to board another living cell and hijack its machinery to make more copies. That's what makes them so different from everything else.
And this difference is so important, especially when we talk about getting sick. See, bacteria are living cells. They can grow and reproduce all on their own. We fight them with antibiotics. But viruses, they're basically just tiny packets of genetic code in a protein shell. They need a host to do anything. And that's exactly why antibiotics are totally useless against them. To fight a virus, you need something different, like a vaccine or an antivirus. Okay, now that we've got that straight, let's talk about the good guys. This is the friend part of the story. You'd be amazed at how much these invisible organisms actually help us every single day. I mean, think about your food. That yogurt or curd you might have had, that's all thanks to a bacterium called lactobacillus. Or what about a nice fluffy piece of bread? You can thank yeast, a type of fungus, for that. And yeah, that same yeast is the magic behind beer and wine. But it's not just about food. Out in the environment, microbes are like the ultimate cleanup crew. They break down dead stuff and recycle all the nutrients. Absolutely essential.
And that whole process for making alcohol, it's called fermentation. It's actually pretty simple. You add yeast to something sugary, the yeast eats the sugar, and what it produces as waste is alcohol. So yeah, basically, this tiny microbe's lunch break is the foundation for a massive multi-billion-dollar industry. Kind of wild, right?
But it gets even better. Microbes don't just make our food. They are literally the source of some of our most powerful medicines. Antibiotics, right? The famous one, penicillin, comes from a fungus. It's a case of one microbe being used to kill another. And what about vaccines? We often use dead or super weakened microbes to basically train our immune system, giving it a wanted poster so it knows what the bad guy looks like before a real invasion. But, as we all know, this story has a much darker side. Because for all the good that microbes do, some of them, well, they're our most formidable enemies.
And that brings us to the other half of this story, when microbes attack.
So there's a word for any microbe that causes disease. It's called a pathogen. And here's the scary part. Any of those groups we just met, bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoa, they all have members that can be pathogens. And these pathogens can be absolutely devastating. You've got diseases like tuberculosis and measles that can just hang in the air we breathe. Others, like cholera and typhoid, can get into our water or our food. And then you have something like malaria, which is caused by a protozoan. It uses a mosquito as its personal taxi service, we call that a vector, to get from person to person.
And it's not just humans who are at risk. The damage goes way beyond us. Pathogens attack animals. Think of anthrax in cattle. They also destroy our food supply. A fungus called rust of wheat can wipe out entire harvests. And, of course, they're the reason food goes bad, causing spoilage and some nasty cases of food poisoning. So in this constant battle against these tiny invaders, how do we fight back? Well, humanity has gotten pretty clever over the years. Our main weapons are really specific. For bacteria, we've got antibiotics. But, and this is super important, you have to use them correctly, only when a doctor says so. Overusing them is how we get those scary superbugs that are resistant.
Now, for viruses, our number one defense is vaccination. Again, it's like a training exercise for your immune system, getting it ready for the real fight.
Which brings up a really important question that a lot of people have. If antibiotics are these miracle drugs, why don't they do a single thing for a virus, like the common cold or the flu?
Well, the answer is actually pretty simple and kind of cool. Antibiotics are designed to target and destroy specific parts of a bacterial cell, things like its cell wall. But a virus isn't even a cell. It doesn't have a cell wall or any of that other machinery. So taking an antibiotic for a virus is like trying to sink a ghost ship with a cannonball. You can fire all you want, but there's just nothing there to hit.
And our defenses aren't just medical, they're right in our kitchens. We're actually constantly making life miserable for microbes. When you pickle something with vinegar or cure it with salt and sugar, you're creating an environment where they just can't grow. Heating milk to pasteurize it kills them off. Sticking leftovers in the fridge slows them way down. Even something as simple as sealing food in an airtight container is a great defense.
Okay, so we've seen microbes as friends and we've seen them as foes. But to really get it, we need to zoom out, because their true role is so much bigger than just that. They are absolutely fundamental to how life on this planet even works.
And there's no better example of this than the nitrogen cycle. Now check this out. Our air is almost 80% nitrogen, but plants and animals can't just breathe it in and use it. It's useless to us in that form. So who's the hero? Bacteria. Certain bacteria in the soil can grab that nitrogen from the air and fix it. They convert it into a form that plants can actually absorb. Those plants get eaten, the nitrogen moves up the food chain. Then, when things die, other microbes break them down and release the nitrogen back, completing the whole circle. Without these microbes, the entire cycle would just stop. Life would stop.
So the big takeaway here is that without these bacteria, life as we know it would completely grind to a halt. This whole thing is called a biogeochemical process, which is just a fancy way of saying it connects everything: life, the earth, and the atmosphere. It's the invisible engine that runs the planet.
So in the end, it's not as simple as friend or foe, is it? Microorganisms are just essential. They build, they destroy, they sustain. The real question isn't whether they're good or bad. The real question is, what's next? As we learn more, how will our relationship with this huge, invisible world change? What will they help us achieve, or what challenges will they face?